I'd never seen a sky that color. Yellowy, black, greeny, purple. It was uncanny.
Oh, it was a day and a night that we shall never, ever forget.
I couldn't believe that this was happening. First the sky, and then this horrible smell. Really sulphurous.
Thunder and lightning, and it was horrible.
We're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex.
Dangerous chemicals over us from
Is the government experimenting with our weather?
Question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention.
Millions of tons of toxic poisons released by planes as part of the government plot to affect climate change.
The government is up there in airplanes spraying all kinds of chemicals to change or manipulate the weather, leaving what you see there, and they call that a chemtrail.
Geoengineering. They say it puts poison in the soil.
Tests show high levels of these chemicals in our rain and soil.
Using planes to spray chemicals into the atmosphere to manipulate or control.
And that's why health department records show a sharp increase in barium and aluminum in California's water supply.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
The Army's need to know more and more about weather that surrounds this planet is a vital part of the expanded research program of atomic weapons. We all talk about the weather. The Army is doing something about the weather.
I would like to take you into the laboratory and show you a few of the experiments that led us to our outdoor experiments in converting clouds into snow. Using a home freezing unit such as this, we can form supercool clouds just like those in the natural atmosphere by taking a tiny piece of dry ice such as this and scratching it so a few tiny fragments fall into the supercool cloud. Long streaks develop. The particles grow very fast. They grow about 1 billion-fold in volume in a few seconds. Many millions of snow crystals form, and we get the same effect as is produced by dry ice. Dry ice is not particularly important as far as the fact that it's CO2. It is primarily important because it's colder than minus 35 degrees centigrade. This is a picture of the first cloud that we seeded back last November. Flying in a small Fairchild plane, and putting dry ice from a small dispenser in the bottom of the plane, and within minutes saw long streamers of snow falling from the base of the cloud and evaporating into the drier air below. Under many conditions, of course, full-fledged snowstorms will be produced in this way. Nature at last has permitted to do a little something about the weather.
Using Schaefer-Langmuir techniques, the Army Signal Corps and Office of Naval Research began conducting many of these experiments.
In 1947, Project Cirrus expanded to test cloud seeding on a hurricane traveling eastbound 350 miles off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. They dropped 80 pounds of dry ice into the raging storm only to realize that the hurricane suddenly changed direction and began traveling back towards the United States. Savannah, Georgia was hit by record-breaking winds of up to 85 miles per hour. More than 1,500 people were left homeless, and at least 2 people died. The total damage was reported in the millions of dollars, and the project and its participants were blamed for what happened.
On the night of the 15th of August 1952, the worst flood in British history swept through the tiny seaside village of Lynmouth. 90 million tons of water devastated the area, killing 35 people and leaving over 400 homeless. 40,000 tons of boulders were dragged off the moors, destroying houses and cars. Reporters spoke to squadron leader Len Otley. He confirmed that he worked on Project or Operation Cumulus, which was also referred to as Operation Witch Doctor. What's more, in mid-August 1952, Alan Yates, a lecturer at Cranfield School of Aeronautics at the time, was asked to take part in cloud seeding experiments. According to Yates, the artificial rain fell over Lynmouth and washed the village into the sea. Newly declassified documents prove that Project Cumulus was indeed going on the day of the flood that year.
Project Skyfire, a U.S. forestry research operation concerned with the study of lightning in all of its manifestations.
Project Skyfire is aimed at lightning fires in western Florida. In detail, the manner in which your work involves you in the dispersion of clouds which happen to have some effect on, or rather bring about thunderstorms or what have you. Could you tell our audience something about that type of work?
Laurie, we're conducting experiments in cloud seeding aimed at determining whether or not weather modification techniques might possibly prevent lightning fires. We carry this work on by seeding clouds with silver iodide nuclei. We disperse silver iodide from specially developed generators located either on the ground or on aircraft. Our experience has been that we can do the best job through aircraft seeding.
Again, man looks to his own efforts to increase the flow of water. Since the 1946 experiments of Dr. Vincent Schaefer, we have known that some clouds can be modified through seeding to yield additional precipitation. In 1961, Congress directed the Bureau of Reclamation to begin a long-range study of cloud seeding with the aim of eventually augmenting the nation's supply of water. The program, called Project Skywater, continues at many sites throughout the United States. Eventually, if the research program proves successful, the methods learned will become part of our nation's integrated water resources program.
In 1962, during the Vietnam War, American forces responded with Operation Ranch Hand. Over the next 9 years, spraying an area about the size of Massachusetts with defoliants, the most notorious being Agent Orange. Large swaths of Vietnam were left barren.
Enough food to feed 600,000 people for a year has been destroyed.
Despite this sudden devastation, U.S. officials said the spraying created no lasting harm.
Milton Ross, a Special Forces advisor near Pleiku, has a son born without the tips of his fingers.
North Vietnam charged today that defoliants have produced many instances of miscarriages, congenital defects, and monstrosities among children.
The Vietnamese government insisted the cause was Agent Orange.
Although that war was long ago, there is lingering anger about the United States' use of a controversial defoliant spread by American aircraft on the jungles there.
An epidemic of birth defects, brain damage, and rare cancers still affecting hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese today.
According to environmental studies, high levels of dioxin could still be found in the soil in certain areas and had seeped into nearby lakes.
Agent Orange was a safe product when it was used in the Vietnam War, and it's a safe product today.
I got something to say. I want to know how come the fascist pigs have been seeding the clouds. Right. The last hour and the airplanes going over twice with all the smoke coming out of them seeding the clouds. And I want to know, why that stuff is going down, man. And why doesn't the media report that stuff to the people, man? I'm telling you what happened. The planes come over for an hour and a half and they seed all the clouds. People of unknown origin were seeding the clouds over the I don't know what they hope to prove, man.
Project Storm Fury assembles a team of highly trained scientists and technicians to fly into mature hurricanes.
Scientists working on the project were convinced that they could reduce hurricane devastation using a process called cloud seeding by spraying the thunderclouds inside the hurricane with a chemical called silver iodide. This would become known as the Storm Fury hypothesis.
The seeding planes fly across the eye and into these clouds, seeding the supercooled water droplets from the belt of maximum winds outwards.
As the silver iodide turns the supercooled water into ice, the heat released during this process causes the seeded clouds to grow and develop into a new outer eye wall. At that time, the United States Army were in Vietnam. Pierre Saint-Amand was part of the team assembled in a top-secret cloud seeding operation known simply as Project Popeye. In May 1967, as monsoon clouds developed over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Armand and his team put their new weapon to the test.
We ejected the material so that it fell into the growing part of the cloud, and it rained very heavily out of it, and everybody was convinced with that one experiment that we'd had done enough.
Project Popeye had opened the door to a new and dangerous type of warfare.
Some said, if you control the weather, you can control the world. Military planners imagined loading the clouds with radiological, biological, or chemical agents and having them rain on demand.
They could attack your enemy using the weather, but deny ever doing so. Allegations were made that cloud seeding had not only made jungle paths impassable, it had also killed thousands of innocent people. But this didn't stop governments from continuing to explore ways of modifying the weather, sometimes for highly questionable purposes.
And that message calls for new frontiers, new visions. It calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. It lays the steps that's necessary to provide a nuclear rocket that will produce benefits that are so unlimited that I couldn't tell you about them if I had all afternoon.
July 1976. Strange, unexplained blackouts in worldwide communications plague the globe and are covertly transmitting extremely low-frequency waves, otherwise known as ELF waves.
It's called the Russian woodpecker because it was essentially that sort of clicking, pecking sound.
In 1982, a report by Pentagon researcher L. Ponte alleges the Russian woodpecker signal is actually creating layers of artificial ionization in the upper atmosphere, which means it could have been bending the jet stream and altering global wind patterns.
There's been a lot of research in military labs over what you can do with putting radio waves into the atmosphere. Some of the research indicates that one can move the jet stream around and thus induce weather conditions.
It's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
Of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere. HAARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. Working in tandem, these transmitters alter the weather anywhere in the world, potentially changing the jet stream's course entirely. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HAARP sends pulses of ELF waves into the ionosphere. The waves get reflected back down and pass through the earth and ocean. But HAARP's startling potential doesn't end there. It's linked to a strange phenomena occurring in our skies.
On clear days, you can often see long white lines being traced high in the sky. They are contrails of jet aircraft, actually long, slender clouds. Weathermen are finding them especially fascinating because a theory is being developed that those long white lines may be changing our weather for the better. Details from Roger O'Neill.
The exhaust from jet engines, usually seen as long, thin trails of white clouds behind high-flying jet airplanes, may be a big reason why there are 30 fewer days of sunshine a year in the Midwest now than there were in 1900. The daily range between high and low temperatures has also narrowed.
In the absence of natural clouds, given the correct atmospheric conditions,
jet aircraft in high frequency can almost completely cover the atmosphere with clouds.
No one is trying to make clouds now using jet engines, but this study suggests that jet travel is inadvertently making our days more cloudy. And someday, weather researchers may be able to use jets on purpose to change our weather. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Champaign, Illinois.
And finally, a federal report today predicted possible catastrophic warming of the Earth by the 1990s with the strong climate change.
Hurricane Gloria is moving on the East Coast tonight like a monster out of a science fiction film.
3,000 homes went underwater, and of those, almost 900 were destroyed.
From 1987 through 1992, California experienced the most severe drought in the state's history. According to NOAA, an anomaly occurs in the jet stream. The winds appear to change direction, blowing east to west instead of west to east, indicating the jet stream coming into the west is suddenly much weaker than normal, causing a drought. By 1995, the jet stream returns to normal.
Here there were huge problems with flooding, intersections and parking lots underwater, homes threatened, people trapped in the river that you see out here behind me, forcing those dramatic rescues.
This U.S. Air Force report graphically outlines the military's desire to exploit and manipulate the weather for the purposes of war by the year 2025. According to one of the most harrowing lines in this report, quote, "Weather modification is a force multiplier with tremendous power that could be exploited across the full spectrum of war-fighting environments."